I'm Tracy Sabol. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, growing louder.
And at this time, there has been
as tensions run high on college campuses, President Biden and former President Trump weigh in on the pro-Palestinian protests. We have team coverage. Election year move. The Biden administration releases a new plan to try and win young voters. An addiction counselor weighs in. Day of prayer. The USCCB announces an initiative for the victims of the Baltimore Bridge collapse. Plus, fire and water. The Olympic flame picks up a special escort on its way to France. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the Feast of St. Athanasius. Our top story tonight, President Joe Biden breaks his silence about campus protests, saying that we are a civil society and order must prevail. The president also says that tensions, chaos, and clashes playing out on college campuses nationwide have not changed his mind about the war in the Middle East. We have team coverage tonight. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales brings us reaction from lawmakers in a moment. But first, we begin with White House correspondent Owen Jensen on the president's remarks. Owen.
Tracy, good evening to you. President Joe Biden was not originally scheduled to speak today about the ongoing protests and unrest on college campuses across the nation, but that all changed late this morning. Standing before reporters and cameras, the president emphasized there is the right to protest, but not the right to cause chaos.
At UCLA, tense clashes with Israel-Hamas war protesters, police in riot gear, removing barricades, dismantling encampments, hundreds of people arrested. And at the White House, President Joe Biden underscores while peaceful protest is protected, violent protest is not.
Destroying property is not a peaceful protest. It's against the law. Vandalism, trespassing, breaking windows, shutting down campuses, forcing the cancellation of classes and graduations. None of this is a peaceful protest.
Biden also said people have the right to walk across campus safely without fear of being attacked.
Let's be clear about this as well. There should be no place on any campus, no place in America for anti-Semitism or threats of violence against Jewish students. There is no place for hate speech.
Demonstrations and arrests have occurred in almost every corner of the nation. President Biden also in the middle of his re-election campaign, focusing on a law and order message while defending the right to free speech. The president, when his remarks concluded, answered two questions from reporters with a firm no.
Mr. President, have the protests forced you to reconsider any of the policies with regard to the region?
No. Thank you.
Mr. President, do you think the National Guard should intervene?
No.
And in New York, on his way into another day of court, former President Donald Trump also spoke about the campus protests, praising the efforts of police, while also warning,
worry about the left, because this is a movement from the left. These are radical left lunatics. And they got to be stopped now, because it's going to go on, and it's going to get worse and worse.
Now, later this month, President Biden makes his own visit to a college campus on May 19th specifically to deliver the commencement address at Morehouse University in Atlanta, Georgia. But first, next week, President Biden will give the keynote address at a remembrance ceremony sponsored by the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. The White House says the president will discuss, quote, our moral duty to combat the rising scourge of anti-Semitism, end quote. At the White House, Owen Jensen, EWTN News Nightly.
House Republican leaders are fighting back against anti-Semitism and protests at American universities. They vowed to use their oversight and funding powers to protect Jewish students and crack down on Gaza war protesters that have disrupted campuses nationwide. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has the latest. Eric?
Good evening, Tracy. A day after House Speaker Mike Johnson and other committee members announced a new Get Tough policy against protests like this on college campuses across the country, Oversight Committee Chair Congressman James Comer and others paid a visit to George Washington University to get a first-hand look for themselves.
Congressman, just get your reaction on what you saw today.
It's very troubling. I can see why we've heard from so many Jewish students that they don't feel safe. And when I ask what laws do I see that have been broken, trespassing. It's illegal to trespass, so this is certainly disruptive.
Well, that's what I've seen so far, is that this is chaotic. And the mayor needs to do her job and allow the citizens of W to continue.
Amid shouts of House GOP go home and free Palestine, about a half a dozen House Republicans made their way through the encampment. Congresswoman Lauren Boebert came to a statue of George Washington draped with a Palestinian flag.
Excuse me, that's not private. Excuse me. This is, yes, it is private property. This is America, and that shit needs to come down.
Protest organizers were not impressed.
I think it is despicable that the people that claim to represent us are placing their Zionist donors above the interests of their constituency.
Protesters claim GWU administration officials have refused to meet with them. Democrats agree with President Biden. These protests can take place, but without violence, destruction, or intimidation.
The First Amendment does not give you the right to break windows, to vandalize buildings, to take over private buildings, and to make students who happen to be of Jewish descent feel unsafe.
We should be doing everything possible in a serious and sensible way to combat anti-Semitism, to crush anti-Semitism, to bury it in the ground.
At the news conference, Chairman Comer announced an emergency hearing next Wednesday to have the D.C. mayor and its police chief testify before lawmakers about the city's response to the protest here on George Washington University. Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
As the protests over the war rock the nation, leaders in the Middle East are reviewing details of a possible ceasefire. Hamas said that it will send a delegation to review Egypt's latest proposal. The leader of Hamas says that he has spoken to Egyptian and Qatari mediators, stressing, quote, the positive spirit of the movement in studying the ceasefire proposal. This comes as Israel released a video of fighter jet strikes on what it says are Hamas targets in Gaza. According to the Hamas-run health ministry, the death toll in Gaza is now more than 34,000 people. All right, now to the war in Ukraine, where a Russian ballistic missile strike injured 14 people in the city of Odessa. A Ukrainian postal and courier company says that one of its sorting depots was struck, but that no employees were hurt. This was the third attack in as many days. Previous strikes killed at least 8 civilians. Well, it took 3 years and 2 presidential administrations. Now, the one trial to decide if Google competed unfairly is concluding. The Department of Justice is trying to convince a federal judge that Google illegally monopolized the online search market. Government lawyers accuse the company of using a web of contracts that made Google the default search engine on millions of devices and browsers. Google says people just chose their product. A decision on the case is expected later this year. The Biden administration's plan to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug is seen as an election year move to try and win over young voters. And it comes just weeks after the president canceled student loans for more than 200,000 borrowers. But the move on marijuana is drawing concern in some corners. The Catechism of the Catholic Church says that the use of drugs, quote, inflicts very grave damage on human health and life, and their use, except on strictly therapeutic grounds, is a grave offense. Recovering addicts are also speaking out, including our next guest. And here to discuss this move by the White House and the DEA is Jim Wahlberg, film producer and executive director of the Mark Wahlberg Youth Foundation. Jim is a Catholic and a recovering addict, and he has worked in addiction recovery for nearly 30 years. Jim, great to have you back on the show. First off, you're welcome. Thanks for being here. Before we get into it, I would just want to get your thoughts on the DEA and the Biden administration moving towards reclassifying marijuana as a less dangerous drug. What do you think of this move?
Well, I first of all, I'm not 100% sure that the DEA is on board with this plan, but I know that the White House is for sure. I think that marijuana has never been more dangerous than it is right now. I mean, I'm 58 years old. When I was a kid, there was 2 kinds of marijuana: expensive marijuana and cheap marijuana. Now, if you walk into one of these dispensaries, there's like 500 different types of marijuana with specific goals in mind, what it will do to you. So it's all chemically, genetically altered. And all of this movement to reclassify marijuana is really a move by two places. It's Wall Street and it's the White House. It's votes.
Yeah, and Jim, while this wouldn't completely legalize recreational use, it would take some steps in that direction. Let's talk a little bit more about the potential side effects of relaxing these laws. How do you see it?
Well, the goal is for these marijuana companies and for Wall Street, right, who's put a ton of money behind this and is making tons of money, is to make it more and more available and to create repeat customers. That's what these chemically and genetically altered strains do, is it causes an addiction. And anyone that says that marijuana is non-addictive is just not being honest.
You may remember this. Back in 2020, the state of Oregon decriminalized nearly all drugs, causing really major issues there. And now they have recriminalized those same substances, things like not just marijuana, but also heroin and other illicit drugs.
Right.
What do you think that signals? What does that tell you, Jim?
It's a failed experiment. It was a failed experiment. I know lots of people who think that legalizing these drugs and creating environments where people can use drugs safely is, I just don't know. I can't. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around subsidizing drug use and providing drugs for people. We live in a society now where, people, you have a problem, take a drug, take a pill. We have something for that, whatever it is. And it was kind of how we got tricked into this opioid epidemic in America. Was they try to convince us that people are not supposed to feel any kind of pain at all.
Jim, thank you for your time and all that you do. We appreciate it. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you.
And we have a lot more still to come here on EWTN News Nightly, including Arizona's governor takes action, new developments in the state's near total ban on abortion, and what it means for the future, and why Catholic bishops in Virginia are calling for support from Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin. Pro-abortion supporters in South Dakota have collected enough signatures to advance their proposal onto the November ballot. Their voters there would decide if abortion could become part of the state's constitution. And in Arizona, following much debate and national attention, the state has repealed its 1864 near total ban on abortion. Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs signed the repeal into law, which may not take effect until 90 days after the legislative session. The repeal was made possible after two Republicans voted alongside Democrats. A 2022 provision banning abortion after 15 weeks is set to become the new state law. Catholic bishops in Virginia are urging Governor Glenn Youngkin to veto two bills promoting contraception. The measures establish a, quote, right to contraception and force health insurance companies to provide coverage for birth control without religious exemptions. Governor Youngkin, a Republican, has not yet said publicly whether he supports the proposals. He has until May 17th to take action on the bills. And for more, we turn to Jeff Caruso, Executive Director of the Virginia Catholic Conference. Jeff, great to have you on. Let's talk more about these bills. I understand one would establish a so-called right for anyone to obtain and use contraception. So, Jeff, does that mean that a teenager could get birth control pills or any other form of contraception without their parents' consent?
The so-called right to contraception bill is shockingly broad. It grants every person a right to obtain contraceptives and even some abortion-inducing drugs and devices. It includes minors, and it even includes sterilizations. And by including both minors and sterilizations, it even undercuts parental rights. Why? Because in Virginia, there's a parental consent law saying that before a minor can have a surgical procedure, the parents have to consent. So this bill is shockingly broad in that it would violate parental rights. It would end lives. It would apply even to minors. It also violates religious liberty and conscience rights. Think about faith-based hospitals and health clinics who have religious or moral objections to providing contraceptives or abortion-inducing drugs or sterilizations due to their sincerely and deeply held beliefs.
And I know it would require also all insurance plans, all of them in Virginia, to cover all of the FDA-approved contraceptives, including some that the USCCB says can induce early-stage abortions. Talk to us more about that, Jeff. Explain the dangers there.
Yes, that's correct. So we're dealing with two coercive and extremely harmful bills. There's the so-called right to contraception bill that we just discussed, and then there's also a separate bill that is the health plan mandate bill. And that bill would require health plans to cover contraceptives and even some abortion-inducing drugs and devices. So this bill would end lives, clearly, because it covers some abortion-inducing drugs and devices, the clearest example being the drug Ella, which acts very similarly to RU 486. And then this bill, again, violates religious liberty. It doesn't contain any exemption for entities that object to providing this coverage. And this raises the exact same issues that led Hobby Lobby and Little Sisters of the Poor all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court.
You know, we don't have a whole lot of time left, Jeff, but I want to ask you this. You know, as we mentioned, the deadline is May 17th here for the governor. What can we as Catholics do between now and then to make our voices heard?
We would urge people, especially if you live in Virginia, go to www.vacatholic.org, which is our website. There's an action alert right on the homepage. So if you live in Virginia, especially, please sign up to get our action alerts and updates, and please take action on that action alert as soon as possible.
All right, Jeff, thank you so much for your time today, and God bless you.
Thank you. You as well.
One new study into the 2024 election finds voters in the U.S. are divided along religious lines. Former President Trump draws support from 81% of white evangelical Protestant voters and 61% of white Catholics. By contrast, 77% of black Protestant voters say that they are supporting President Biden. He also has support of 87% of atheist voters. For more analysis, we turn to Greg Smith, Associate Director of Research at the Pew Research Center. Greg, great to be with you again. We appreciate it. So tell us a little bit more about this study, especially the Catholic vote, and what stood out the most to you.
Well, what we see overall is that among Catholic registered voters, the balance of opinion right now tilts more toward Donald Trump than toward Joe Biden. Overall, 55% of Catholic registered voters tell us that they would vote for Donald Trump if the election were held today. That number rises to 61% among white Catholics, and support for Trump is lower among Hispanic Catholics. Hispanic Catholic registered voters are divided right down the middle. About half tell us they would vote for Joe Biden if the election were held today, and the other half tell us they would vote for Donald Trump.
Greg, and how does that compare to, say, other religions?
Well, if you compare Catholics as a whole to people in other religious groups, they tend to fall somewhere in the middle. We know that white evangelical Protestant voters are more supportive of Donald Trump compared to Catholics. White evangelicals are some of Donald Trump's strongest supporters. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we can see that black Protestants and voters who have no religion, atheists and agnostics, and those who tell us their religion is nothing in particular, those voters are more supportive of Joe Biden than are Catholics. So Catholics tend to fall somewhere in the middle, and that's pretty typical with what we've seen in recent elections.
Yeah, and Greg, now let's talk about the people who rated President Biden and former President Trump as great, good, average, poor, or terrible. What do the faithful have to say about that?
It's interesting. About a quarter of Catholics tell us that they think Joe Biden is a great president or a good president. Larger numbers of Catholics, more like half of Catholics, tell us that they think Donald Trump was a great president or a good president. Part of what you see there is that not just among Catholics, but among voters as a whole, Donald Trump's supporters are more likely to say that he was a great or a good president than Joe Biden supporters are to say the same about Joe Biden. So that explains some of the difference you see there.
Yeah, and I know you also asked about the former president and the charges related to the outcome of the 2020 election. What were the findings there?
It's interesting, lots of Catholics say that if the election were held today, they would vote for Donald Trump, but many of them also say they think he might have crossed the line in terms of attempting to change the results of the 2020 election. Something like 6 in 10 Catholics tell us they think Donald Trump either broke the law, attempting to change the outcome of the 2020 election, or he did something wrong, stopped short of breaking the law, but he did do something wrong. Smaller numbers, about a quarter of Catholics, tell us they don't think Donald Trump did anything wrong. And a lot of Catholics, like a lot of other voters, tell us they're just not sure. They don't know whether Donald Trump did something wrong or not.
Oh, Greg, quickly before I let you go, I know that you didn't include findings from groups like Jewish voters, but is there any indication how Jewish voters are responding to President Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war and also the on-campus protests that we've been seeing?
We don't have those data for Jewish voters. We're limited by sample size. We don't have enough Jewish voters in the latest survey to be able to talk about their views. We do know, however, that if you look historically over the long term, Jewish voters are some of the most strongly and consistently Democratic voters in the U.S. electorate. And that remains true today if we look, for example, at their partisanship. The big majority of Jewish voters continue to tell us they identify with or lean toward the Democratic Party.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for coming on today and sorting all this out. We appreciate it.
Thank you again for having me.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, a second home. The Latin Catholic Patriarch of Jerusalem takes possession of a church in Rome. Plus, the Olympic flame takes an important step on its journey to France. Back this year, when the Catholic Church offers the Mass on May 18th for the National Day of Prayer and Remembrance for Mariners, the bishop promoter of Stella Maris of the Catholic Church for the People of the Sea is making a request. In a special way this year, we remember those who have been impacted by the collapse of the Key Bridge, particularly the 6 construction workers who perished in the bridge collapse, and for their families as they mourn the loss of their loved ones. Well, this as authorities in Maryland say they have recovered the body of the 5th victim in a red truck. The workers were fixing potholes on the bridge when it collapsed. The 6th victim remains missing. Well, against the backdrop of heightened tension in the Middle East, Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, took possession of his honorary church in Rome. The move also solidifies the long-standing connection between the Holy See and the Holy Land. EWTN Vatican Bureau Chief Andreas Tonhauser has more.
Peace is not something to be done. Peace is a way of being in life. It is a style. Even within this conflict, one can live the peace that is hospitality, that is the ability and courage to believe in the other, whoever they may be, in knowing how to love them even when they are not understood, in seeking reconciliation at all costs.
Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, took possession of his assigned titular Roman church, St. Onofrio, located near the Vatican. Built in the 15th century, the church was assigned to the Equestrian Order of the Holy Sepulchre of Jerusalem in 1945 by Pope Pius XII. Originally scheduled for April the 15th, the ceremony was postponed when Iran launched airstrikes on Israel. This prompted the cardinal to cancel his planned trip to Rome. In his homily, the cardinal addressed the situation in the Holy Land, emphasizing the immense impact of this war on the lives of the population, surpassing that of any other conflict.
It is beyond question that at this moment, the divide between Israelis and Palestinians, between various religious and identity-based communities, is deeper than it has ever been. This is a moment where we all await something significant, something that will change the course of history. Yet we see that nothing is happening.
The assignment of titular churches in Rome is an ancient tradition which marks the close bond between the cardinals and the Pope, the Bishop of Rome. The cardinal assigned a Roman titular church does not participate in the parish's daily activities, nor does he have the authority to appoint pastors or make important decisions for the parish. Instead, this church becomes a kind of second home for the cardinals, where they are able to celebrate Mass and attend to their spiritual needs.
Allora noi come Chiesa siamo Chiesa di Roma.
We, as a church, are the Church of Rome, of Saint Onofrio, and the Church of Jerusalem. We are called to be this, not to be the light, the Lamb, but to see the reality of the world through the paschal light of Christ, who was born and died out of love, and was raised by the power of the Holy Spirit. Even in this tragic, difficult moment, we are called to be witnesses of the kingdom of God, which fulfills itself, which grows, even within this war.
Anche dentro questa guerra.
In Rome, Andreas Tonhauser, EWTN News Nightly.
Well, finally tonight, there is a fire aboard a beautiful 19th century wooden sailing ship, but it is not as bad as it sounds. The vessel is helping to bring the Olympic flame to France. For part of the journey across the Mediterranean Sea, it received an escort from an Italian Coast Guard vessel. The flame is expected to arrive soon in Marseille. The Olympics in Paris begins on July 26th. And we thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Tracy Sabol. Good night and God bless.